Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to Iron Anchor Cycles. So I guess you might call this our Christmas episode because this is the last video we're going to be able to get to post before Christmas this year. And I think it's pretty fitting because the stuff we're going to show you for this bike are all things that are pretty easy for you to grab for yourself if you didn't get what you wanted under the tree this year. So got a bunch of cool little stuff to go on this bike. And speaking of this bike, you may remember it from, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 videos ago. We did pipe, wheels, brakes, whole bunch of major upgrades, cartridges, cross triple trees, all that good stuff. Did a bunch of work on this bike. So when the customer came to pick it up, I didn't realize he actually wasn't picking it up, but rather just wanted to pay the bill and then add a few more things on, which of course is fine by us. So that's what we're doing now, is doing a few more little upgrades. Now, one thing we've already done, which is not going to be a topic of this video, is the Öhlins rear shock we put on. So if you want to see doing one of those, I'll leave you a link up here where we've done the exact same install before, so figured no reason to rehash that. But what we're going to be doing in this particular video is doing some lighting upgrades, principally for this bike. Kind of going to divide this into 2 sections, maybe 3 sections, depending on how you look at it. First one stands by itself, and that is going to be a headlight upgrade using the new Shark Demon headlight from Custom Dynamics. Now, if you're familiar with these or familiar with lighting upgrades on these bikes, obviously this is reminiscent of, I don't want to say it's a copy of, but certainly very similar to the very popular Baja Designs lights that we've all been installing in bikes for the last several years. And Custom Dynamics has this year, in the last couple of months, gotten into this space. They started with the Road Glide. That was back in the spring, I want to say, like maybe March or something like that. And then they've been adding some other options and other bike fitments. And so obviously we've got the one for a Lowrider ST here. There's a lot of reasons I really like this option. Not that the Baja is not still a good option, but for a lot of reasons, love the Custom Dynamics option. Number one, Custom Dynamics has been around a long time, super trustworthy, super helpful. Their warranties are awesome. Their tech support is awesome. There's nothing not to like about them as a company and the way they do business. So that's number one. Number two, these kits are simple and complete. The Baja lights are obviously a universal product, and then you wind up sourcing a harness, which has relays in it, and then you're gonna need a bracket, and you're gonna have to be running, because of the harness, with those relays, you're going to be running power down the neck of the bike back to the battery. The relays, depending on which light you have, they're either going to click and make noise, or sometimes they'll hum. Not exactly ideal, not a big deal, but not ideal. These are direct plug and play and have everything you need in the box. So comes with the bracket, doesn't need a wiring harness, just uses a little adapter that I'll show you. And the big question obviously is going to be, are they as bright as the Baja? I have no scientific way of measuring that, but I can tell you the answer is probably no. And the reason I say that is because these are DOT and SAE compliant and the Baja lights are not. Probably because the Baja lights are so stupid bright that they really are brighter than what you should be driving down the road with. I have one on my bike. Actually, I've got one on 2 of my bikes, so not passing any judgment on it. I'm just saying that you're going to get everything you need and probably more out of this, and at a much lower price point with a really high quality product. So that's why I like it. So that said, and this will be the go for everything that's going to be in this video today. If you want more information or you want to see pricing or availability on these, check the description of the video. Links to all this stuff is going to be there. The link for the model for the Lowrider ST will be the one that we link, but if you've got another bike, you can obviously just sort of search from there and you can see what the other options are. So that's going to be my plug to hopefully maybe buy something from us if you're in the market. It's the last I'll mention it, and we'll just we'll keep going with the video. So headlight is going to be the first thing we're going to do. In addition to the headlight, we are also going to be doing some reworking of the lighting in the back here. So one thing that's pretty common is wanting to get rid of these turn signal bars, whether it's on a bagger or one of these bikes. It's been a trend for forever, I guess, of wanting to clean up and slim down the lines on the back of the bike. So the easiest and simplest way to do that, with a caveat, is replace the taillight with an integrated taillight that's got turn signals integrated into it, like this one. And this is obviously another Custom Dynamics product. This is my favorite of the integrated taillights. This is their low profile one. They do have a Pro Beam version, which is a little bit bigger. Maybe it's brighter. Different style of LEDs in it. I like this one better. I think it looks better. This is what's on my Lowrider S, and we install these a lot. Now, are these turn signals that are in here enough? I guess it depends on what your definition of enough is. If you are just wanting there to be something there, yeah, I mean, it gets it done. There is turn signals built into this, and they do exist. Are these, quote unquote, you know, legal to be operated as your primary turn signals? According to Custom Dynamics, no. They sell the part as auxiliary turn signals, meaning this is meant to be added in addition to your existing turn signals. So you may want something else. Now, plenty of people, and again, no judgment, will just run these and nothing else and call it good enough. And I happen to agree that I think for the most part it really is. I know there's this whole notion out there of, you know, you gotta be seen, you gotta be heard, all that stuff. The truth is, if you've been riding for any amount of time, you know, no matter what you do, no one is going to see you, no one is gonna care, and no one is gonna give you any amount of space or courtesy whatsoever. You're on your own. And not for nothing, this is maybe a topic for another time, but I actually kind of think that's how it should be. You shouldn't be relying on what other people are gonna do and assume that they can see you or know what you're gonna do before you do what you're gonna do. So I'll leave that alone for now. But this particular customer, probably wisely, has decided that they want something else in addition to just this for their turn signals. Now, obviously, we want to get rid of this bar, and so we're going to be replacing, the way these turn signals are in here is with it's connected into the taillight base plate. So we've got, it's actually not sitting here, but we've got a regular black taillight base plate to go on here to replace that. But then what do we do for additional turn signals? Well, the beginning of that story starts with, we're doing front and rear turn signals from Codlin. Let me sidebar that. And I think these are really cool. I've not ever installed them before, so I'm excited to see how these go. These parts are, you know, both available. We carry them, and I'm excited to now know what they're about, so we can, you know, start to promote them if they're nice. But these are super, super small. I'll get this unpackaged and show you later. They're going to mount onto your fender struts. Now, this would be a very minor thing if this bike was a Lowrider S and not a Lowrider ST. The Lowrider S and plenty of the other Softail models that have their turn signals mounted here have the holes and provision for wiring inside of this fender strut that these will be pretty much just a bolt-on. You just take it apart, wire these in, put it back on, and you're done. This bike obviously does not have those, and while you could go through the effort of, you know, drilling holes in this and trying to machine it to get the, you know, bosses right on it, and then go on the backside and cut the groove in to run the wires through here, the customer was kind of thinking he wanted to do gloss black fender struts instead of the, you know, kind of wrinkle finish that's on here. So we killed two birds with one stone and got a set of Lowrider S, not Lowrider ST, but Lowrider S fender struts from Harley, which are in gloss black, which have the provisions for the turn signals and the wiring. So we're gonna swap those fender struts and we're gonna put the turn signals on, and that's kind of gonna complete what we're doing back here. There's one other piece that we need, also available through Custom Dynamics, which is the wiring harness to get your turn signals wired up here, because obviously on this particular bike, all your wiring for your rear lighting goes inside the fender, under the fender, I guess, back to the tail light. We're gonna need separate feeds coming up these you know, channels here. So we're gonna use the Lowrider S rear tail light harness, and I'll show you how that works. We're kind of using it in the opposite way it was designed to work, but I think it should do exactly what we needed to do with a little bit of modification. So last piece I mentioned, we're doing Codlin turn signals in the front as well. So we've got these really small little micro LED black turn signals that are gonna replace the bullets in the front. Again, haven't done these either. I'm excited to put them on. I think this should be a good look. I haven't used a lot of Codlin's products, but I have been a fan of a lot of the ones that I've seen so far. So more or less, this video, like I said, is about two things. It's about doing the Shark Demon headlight, which is what we're gonna do first, and it's about this front and rear Codlin turn signal and what our how the install goes and what our impressions are of those parts. Obviously, we're doing the tail light and the base plate and the fender struts. It's all stuff we've covered before, so really that's kind of not for the customer, but for the purpose of this video, that's kind of an extra add-on. But really what we're talking about is the headlight and the two sets of turn signals. That's the new stuff for us for this video. So That is definitely enough monologue and talking. Let's end it there and get to work on starting with the headlight. All right, so we're gonna get started with getting the fairing removed so we can do the headlight. First step in that is gonna be to take the windshield off. All right, with the windshield removed, we've got 3 more screws on each side, 1, 2, and 3 to take off. Okay, with those screws removed, the outer fairing should just pull away from the inner fairing. And all we've got left now to do is just disconnect the headlight harness. And our fairing is free. Now, because the headlight is actually mounted to the fairing, obviously our work is going to take place here. So we'll bring this over to the workbench and we'll get to removing the stock headlight and installing the new one. All right, so with the fairing off here, our first order of business is going to be to remove this trim ring, which can be done by just kind of grabbing it and turning it counterclockwise, and it will release. There we go. All right, so we pop that off, and then we should have some screws under here, which should be T25s to remove the stock headlight carrier from the fairing. Let's see, let me just tilt that. There we go. Okay. Those screws removed, the headlight should just lift right out. There we go. All right, ready to start installing the new bracket. So the first piece of the new bracket is this round flat plate here, and hopefully what you'll be able to see here is clear. So you've got these 4 larger inside holes, and these are going to be for attaching the second part of the bracket. And these 4 holes on the outside are going to be able to attach this plate onto the fairing. So we've got 1, 2, 3 holes that the original headlight came out of, and we've got 4 holes on the bracket. So what we're going to do is place this on here, lining up the first 3 holes with the original holes in the fairing. We're going to use the original kind of self-tapping screws here to put this on. And then for the final hole, we're going to drill the fairing out using the bracket as a template with a 3/16 drill bit. And then they've got an included bolt and nut that you're going to use to secure these 2 together for that 4th mounting location. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. All right, so with the fairing prepared, we'll get our first look at the headlight itself. So definitely got that Baja style going on. Looks a lot like an LP6. Obviously, in this case, there are 7 LED pods in here. Not sure what the net effect of that is, but nevertheless, that's what it is. On the back, it's got a very similar, I'll call it the same style plug as the Baja light does. But the difference, like I mentioned before, is there's your harness. So it's just an adapter that goes from that 4-pin, I think that's a Deutsch connector, or I don't know if it's a Weatherpack or a Deutsch connector. I think these are Deutsch not that it matters. Yeah, Deutsch says right on it. And then goes to that, flat four-way connector that the bike uses. So that's it, real easy. So in any event, what I'm going to do here is start by getting the second piece of the bracket. So hopefully this is pretty obvious how this works. You got these studs on here that are going to attach onto the bracket we just put on, and then the light will pivot on this bracket, same way Baja light does. So start by putting the light onto the bracket, and then we'll attach the bracket itself with the light onto the frame. Okay, so with the 4 bolts and washers attached, 2 on each side, headlight onto the bracket, I'm going to take the bracket and headlight assembly, drop it down into place here, feeding the wiring harness through, feeding the studs through, and we've got 4 nuts here that are going to go on the back to secure this in place. Okay, so I'm going to put the wiring harness adapter in place. I'm pretty much done. So there's the first look, that installed. I think that looks pretty good. Might be aimed a little bit high, but like I said, we can make that adjustment. So for now, our next step would be to reinstall the fairing, but I've got a feeling that doing our turn signals in the front is going to be a little bit easier to do with the fairing removed, or maybe necessary. So let's leave this here for a moment, grab the front turn signals, get those installed, and we'll put it all back together and see how it all looks, and more importantly, how it works. Okay, removal of the turn signals is pretty straightforward. The plug is conveniently located right here. So this is the only part that you kind of need the fairing off to get access to. I suppose you could have the fairing on and sort of pull it back, and it's kind of what the instructions mentioned, doing this with the fairing on. So let's just assume it's possible, but I think probably much easier or maybe better with the fairing off. So in any event, we'll disconnect that plug, and then there's 1 bolt on the inside of the turn signal here that we need to remove in order to remove the turn signal. All right, so we got that out. And then just pop that through. So turn signal's off. Let's look at putting the new turn signal on. Okay, so here are what the turn signals look like. Now, hopefully you can see just how really teeny tiny small these are. This is no joke. Just to put it in comparison, like there's my thumb and there's the turn signal. So they're really, really small. Anyway, these are going to mount kind of like a Euro style turn signal where the wires run through the mounting studs. So in order to get this mounted up, it's why there's no plug put on the end. So we've got a little adapter plate here that's going to cover up the unused hole in the bracket on the fairing support. So we'll run that through. Get that down on there. And then we'll run the wires through. And it's going to go a little something like that. Now, in order to make this work, I've got to slide on. There's a big fender washer here and a lock washer and a nut. So all this is going to slide on over the wires and come up and thread on. Okay, think that looks pretty good. So I'm just gonna see if I can move this wire loom down on these wires a little bit. That looks good. All right, and truthfully, I have no idea why they give you so much extra on this harness. I mean, it's not a big deal. We'll get it all tucked up in here nicely, but this harness is like, I don't know, 12 inches long, and it probably could have been maybe 4 or 6, but whatever. We've got 3 wires here. I'm gonna look at their instructions. And we've got the pin layout for the plug. So following that, I am going to put this together. Okay, so that's that. And we'll plug this in. All right, and now because we've got all this extra wire, I'm going to make a little loop here, and I'm just going to zip tie this harness up and out of the way. Like that. Cut off the slack, and that's it. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. I won't film that because it's obviously the exact same thing. And then we'll test them out. Now, normally what I would do in a case like this is try to get all the lights put back together first before we turn it on to avoid throwing codes, but I'd really like to test these turn signals before we put the fairing back on. So it's going to throw a code because of the headlight. We'll just have to go in and clear that when we're all done with everything. So no big deal, just a call out there. So I'll do the other side and we'll give it a test. Okay, so here's our turn signals installed, and you probably literally can't see anything because they are so teeny. But let's go ahead and turn the bike on. And hopefully you can see what I can see in the camera screen, that we've got the running lights on and working on both sides. And let's try out our turn signals. So there's our right and left. And it looks like we're good. So I'm gonna go ahead and shut the bike off. And we'll grab the fairing, get the headlight connected, get the fairing put back on, and we will test everything all together. And then assuming everything is good, we'll move on to the rear. All right, so putting the fairing on is just the opposite of taking it off. One thing that's a little different is because we've got this big pigtail on the back of the headlight now, you can actually reach up and make this connection from underneath rather than having to plug it into the back of the headlight while it's sitting here held in your hands and it's all loose. So what I'm gonna do is just stick that wiring harness down there where it needs to go, and then I will do the connection on it once the fairing is on. So I'm just gonna slide the fairing into place, making sure we're lined up. And then I'm just gonna start a couple of the fasteners to hold it. All right. The goal here is not to tighten anything down right away, but rather to make sure we get it all lined up and get all the fasteners started. So I'm over here, throw this one in. All right, with all the main mounting screws on and snug down, go ahead and grab the windshield and get those screws in place, and then get everything final tightened. Okay, so like I mentioned, our last step here is going to be to make the connection for the headlight. So I'm going to plug that in. And now this just needs to get tucked up out of the way. And for the moment, I'm just going to stick it up here. But you need to just throw a zip tie on there to keep it up in place. But at the moment, that's where it's going to stay. So looking at this, the headlight actually looks like the adjustment might be pretty spot on. I thought it might have been a little high, but I don't think so. We'll check it on the ground against the garage door, which is a known distance and height to make sure we've got the alignment correct. But for the purposes of the install and the video, we'll just make sure it works here. So go ahead and fire that up. Low beam looking good. And high beam is on this side. And high beam. So we're golden. All right, so that's the install of the headlight. I will raise the bike back up so we can get started on the rear end. Once I have it up in the air, I'll throw a zip tie under there to keep that wiring harness up out of the way. And then we'll just come back to this to do the final alignment at the very end of the video. But for now, let's move to the back. All right, so here we are at the back of the bike. And like I said, we've got a couple of jobs here. Replace the tail light, replace the base plate, and then add our turn signals along with the new fender struts. So I'm gonna start with doing the tail light and base plate for no other reason than it's the easier part of this job. I've opened up the turn signals from Codlin and kind of looked at the wiring, and it is gonna be a little bit more complicated to get this done and get the full functionality out of those lights than maybe it should be, but we'll get to that when we get to it. So suffice it to say, we're gonna start here. So pretty simple. I'm gonna start by removing the OE taillight. All right. And with that done, so this is actually kind of interesting. These lowrider STs don't have a circuit board base plate the way the regular bikes do. So the tail light, I mean, normally you'd be able to unplug it from this side too, but normally they'd be able to circuit board here to make all those connections from. So we're now going to have to do a little bit of modification on this end as well. I kind of forgot about that, to be honest. So in addition to, you know, just taking this off and swapping it over, we are going to have to do a little customization. All right, can't get that off. Just pry up on that tab. There we go. All right. Tail light is released. Now, in truth, like I said, I really did forget how this works on these bikes. So I haven't done that many of these. So what I'm going to start off with by doing here is I'm just going to undo these wiring connections here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm just going to pull these down through there. And now we can take this base plate off. It should all come together once we get this screw out of here. Now, we might need to pull the license plate bracket off. I hope not, but sometimes you need a little extra room. Nope, got it. All right, so that's all gonna come off as one piece, and we're good to go. Now, let's talk about what we've got here, what the kind of the issues are. So this is the taillight base plate. And normally what you would do on pretty much any other bike is you would install this like this, and there'd be a circuit board in the original base plate that you would pop out, stick in here, and all of your connections would be made on the base plate. The circuit boards are available separately, and we have them on the shelf too, actually. But these plugs are not the same as what goes into the circuit board, so that's not necessarily of any help to us. Let's take a look at the tail light. So what we've got here are all the unique connectors that would plug into the circuit board. So these connectors don't match these connectors. We've got all the right wires here, they just don't match up. So we've got a couple of different options of how we can proceed. We can start cutting and splicing, which I don't want to do. We can put matching ends on one side or the other to get these to go together, which is a possibility. But I'm going to look and see if maybe there's something else we can do that will offer something in the way of a compatibility conversion. And I'll mention that because we're kind of in the same position on the other lights. Now, I don't want to deviate too far and get ahead of myself, but basically I mentioned in the beginning of the video that I had a harness, and here I'll show it to you actually. This won't take us too far off topic. This harness right here is something Custom Dynamics sells when you are trying to do basically the opposite of what we're doing here. So if you have a lowrider S, what you're going to have back here is you'll have the taillight base plate like you normally do, and the taillight will be plugged into it, but the wires running to that circuit board will not have turn signal functionality in them. It's missing that piece of the functionality because the turn signals don't connect to the taillight base plate like they do on most other bikes. They connect directly through the fender struts back down into the harness under the seat. So Custom Dynamics sells this little harness, which has, it's almost like a T harness, right? So you're going to plug these in where your factory turn signals connect, plug the factory turn signals back in here, and then this harness is going to run up underneath the fender, and it comes with little magnets to do that. And what's inside of here is a left and a right turn signal plug-in. And these have the same terminals on them as what you'd find on the circuit board, so that when you're installing an integrated taillight or any kind of extra taillights or any kind of extra turn signals back here, you can plug your turn signals, click, into there, and then you get the turn signals in both places. So my thought was we're kind of doing the opposite, so I thought a harness like this might work. Now, obviously what we're trying to do is run the harness down through the sides, and this is only one leg, but my idea was that I was going to cut this open and would retape it back up, but we would use this sort of T end here to get the second set of turn signals connected, and then I'd look at what the Codlin lights came with and we'd see what we could do here. What's interesting about the Codlin lights is they're a 4-wire light, which makes sense because there are 3 functions. So you've got a ground, running, brake, and turn. And depending on the kind of bike you have, whether without a tail light, whether you're using your turn signals as brake lights, can give you different functionality. The problem with their lights, I guess I'm getting ahead of myself here, but hey, you know what? I started talking about it, so I want to keep talking about it. Here's one of the turn signals. And this is not dissimilar to the Alloy Art fender strut light installation that we've done on the channel a couple of times before. The big difference here is that the harness they give you is only this long. So I was just kind of annoyed that the front turn signals had too long of a harness on them. This has too short of a harness. So my hope was that this harness that came on this light would be, because this is this is a specific application here, right? I figured that the harness that came on here would be long enough to get you from where the turn signal goes back to where the connections are made. It's not even close. So my intention was to use this, but understanding that I would probably have to cut it short and then just splice in the other ends and we'd be fine. But the reality is I'm gonna use this because we've got it and it's got, these ends on here done nicely, but I'm going to have to add 2 more wires to this, and I'm going to have to split it up, and I'm going to have to run it down, and we're going to make our connections inside the fender strut. So this is a very simple oversight, I feel like, on their part that could have been fixed very easily, would be to make this harness longer. So you could cut it to length and make all your connections under the seat and be done. So that's a bit of a pain. So I'm going to use this plus some more wires. We'll get to all this later. But I want to figure out what I'm going to do here first, because like I said, I completely forgot that there was no circuit board under there. So let me see what the options are, and I will come up with something. So I know I've done this before. I can't remember what I did the last time. I'm pretty sure I made new ends for one side or the other. But we'll figure something out, and I'll come up with something. So let me do a little bit of thinking, and I'll come right back. Okay, I'm back. So the short answer to the question of what to do here is Custom Dynamics does make a little kit for you to adapt the plugs from a Lowrider ST or an El Diablo or a Fast Johnny or whatever to a standard taillight or integrated taillight setup. Here's a picture of it, which I found on the parts website. And the simplest solution would be just to buy that. And I will include that in the links down below if you're looking to do this project for yourself. However, I don't have any with me here on the shelf, and the nearest one is Nevada, and that's gonna take a week to get. And I'm not really interested in letting this sit here for a week. So I'm just gonna do this customized the same way I did it the last time now that I think about it. So here is the integrated taillight. I did the modifications on this side already. Excuse me. Pretty simple. I took the female plugs that were on the old turn signals that we took off, cut those off, and soldered them onto the leads from here and cut off that big Y thing that would allow you to add another set of turn signals, which we're not going to do. So those are ready to go. And then I did not have a matching male or female for either plug that was on the taillight side of this, the stop and run function and ground, I guess. So I just took something I did have a male and female of, which was this little 4-pin, I guess sort of these like Delphi connectors. I don't know what they're called. But anyway, so soldered the 3 connections on here. Rather than like crimping and pinning these and making the wires be all the same color, I just used the wires that were on there. The male sides of these that we do all the time for handlebars are very easy to pin and depin. For some reason, I have a lot of trouble depinning the female side. So I find it easier just to solder it. So the colors on the wires weren't going to match anyway, which is why I didn't really care. Like if the wires on the bike had been the same color as the wires on the taillight, I would have made more of an effort to keep it consistent. But you've got a red wire, an orange wire, and a black wire on the taillight, and you've got a black wire, a blue wire, and a blue wire with a red stripe on the bike. So it doesn't match anyway, but at least the wires in the actual pins, in the connectors will match now. So here's the male end. With the matching wires to these, and I'm going to solder these connections. And I left one undone that I could show you that I would just do on camera. I could go to the service manual and look up the wiring colors for all of these, but I'm pretty sure I just know what they are. I've done this enough times. Reasonably sure, black is ground, the blue without the stripe is the running light, and the blue with the red stripe is the tail light. And I'm going to assume on the Custom Dynamics light that the black is the ground, obviously, the red is the tail light, or the stop light, and the orange is the running light. We're going to test all this, and if I have to, repin some things and reconfigure, we will, but I'm pretty sure I've got it right. So from here, pretty straightforward. I've got some heat shrink on here. I've got these stripped back already. I'm going to do the same on this plug. And then just go ahead and solder each of these 3 connections. And what I want to do, though, is double check and make sure I do these all the same. So we've got red going to red. So I'm going to put red to the blue with the red stripe, or the blue with the red stripe on it. And I'm going to do these one at a time, just so I don't have any confusion here. Right. It's a little faster to do these in batches, but like I said, keep things clean and simple if we do them one at a time. One last solder. I will say, soldering is not my most favorite thing to begin with, but doing it on the bench is really not that bad. I really hate doing soldering on the bike like this. This one is not so bad because it's pretty easily accessible, but in general, I try to avoid this whenever I can. If I needed another reason why soldering on the bike sucks, I have a really good heat gun. I mean, it wasn't expensive, just works really well. That's plugged in at the workbench. I could grab it and unplug it and plug it in over here. I just never do. I always grab this battery operated one, which is from Milwaukee, so I assumed it would work pretty well. And I've got a pretty big 5.0 battery on it. This is a piece of junk. It is not worth the whatever I paid for it. It takes so long to warm up. It doesn't get really hot enough. It sucks, but when you're just doing a couple of these, you just get by. Let's just see, this battery's dead. All right, let's see what we got. All right. See, I mean, I know it didn't feel, maybe it did feel like it took a long time to you. It feels like it takes forever to me, and it should not take that long. When you got to do a lot of them, that really sucks. So I'll fast forward through the rest of them for you. Just wanted you to see what I was talking about. All right, with these connections made, just go ahead and put some tape on here, and we will call it good to go. All right, so that's done. Let me say, that little harness I showed you, I ordered some of those, so I'm not doing this again. I can't remember what the price is. I think it's like 30 bucks. For the amount of time I spent doing this, this is crazy. I mean, obviously I'm doing it, you do what you gotta do, but I'm not trying to save money here by doing this and, fucking around with all these wires. So for something like that, plug and play is nice on electrical stuff. So let's go ahead and get this mounted up so we can test it. I'm gonna just wipe the dirt and junk off of here. We'll get the base plate put on, plug in the taillight, see what it does. Okay. Let's see what we got here. All right. Well, I guess I can just kind of screw this in place as long as need something to hold it up. Might as well use the screws. All right. Guess we don't have to tighten it all the way down in case I got to open it back up again, but let's see how we did. All right, so presumably that's our running light. So if we hit our brakes, light should get brighter. Indeed. So that's good. Let's try our turn signals. There's right. And left. Beautiful. All right, so we got all the wiring connections correct. So this is pretty much done here. I'll just go ahead and snug these down and we'll be good to go. Really nothing left to do in this area. That actually, it went fine. I mean, we had a little bit of a hiccup there, which happens, you know, when you're doing this stuff and you forget what you did the last time. But hopefully if you're doing this yourself, you will just have bought the, harness, pigtails, and you won't have to do any of that soldering. So let's move on to doing the turn signals, which is definitely going to require a little bit of figuring out and also definitely some soldering. So we actually don't even have to start at the bike. I can start with the new fender struts and get the turn signals set up in those, and it'll be just as simple as swapping them, into the bike. So we'll clear a spot on the workbench and we'll start getting that figured out. Okay, so I probably should have set this up over on the other workbench where the soldering iron is, because we're definitely going to need that. But there's a bunch of junk in the way there, and I was feeling too lazy to move it, and there was already a towel sitting here, so here we are. First of all, here are the new fender struts. So hopefully what you'll notice is, like I mentioned, these are gloss black, which is something the customer was wanting to do, matches some of the other things he's changed on the bike. But the big functional difference for us here is, number one, we've got these holes put in here, and hopefully you can see it's not quite so simple as just drilling 2 holes. The rear hole is oval shaped for the factory turn signal, and the Codlin turn signals are ovaled as well. So you would need to basically do it on a milling machine, not using a drill, or I suppose you could do it by hand and, carve it out with like a cutting bit or something, like a burr bit on a die grinder, but I digress. The other thing is there are these channels cut through here to run your wiring, and the Lowrider ST fender struts do not have those. It's actually interesting. I'll show it to you. The last one I took off on a different bike, one of them has the cut in it. I think the one closest to the front of the bike has the channel in it, but then the 2 that are further back don't. So again, milling machine or something real careful by hand to modify one of those, much better off just buying the replacements. It's a little bit of, a lot of money for what it is. I think this set in gloss black, I think it was like almost $400. So it's not insignificant, but in the grand scheme of things, if it's what you want to do, it's what you want to do. You know what I mean? So, okay, here is my chief complaint with this setup. I do not think that it's up to Codlin to, come up with a whole bunch of different plugs and adapters and all that. I mean, it'd be nice if they did. I mean, that's the beauty of Custom Dynamics, is they think all this stuff through and they'll sell you adapters to make any of their products that are capable of working. They'll give you a way to make it work on whatever bike, assuming it's possible. Most other companies don't do that. This is not dissimilar, like I said, to the Alloy Art lights. But these harnesses are just too short. I mean, look, these lights are obviously purpose-built for, Softail fender struts. So let's mock this up in place. That goes through there. I love the way it looks. I mean, they're super clean. It matches the gloss black really well. Nice choice by the customer to go with the gloss black. But here's the issue. Run your wires down. They end right here. I mean, what is that about? It just makes no sense to me that they couldn't be bothered to spend the extra 6 cents to extend these wires so that they're long enough. If these wires were long enough, not only would you not need a harness like this, if you didn't care about having it all pluggable, unpluggable, which I do, and I think you should care, but if you didn't care, you could literally just come and tap these wires, boom, 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 right in, and this would be a 20-minute install, and you'd be done. In our case, we're gonna put plugs on it to make sure that everything is modular and removable in case you have to take the fender off, in case you wanna change this stuff. Plugs are important. You don't wanna be hard wiring stuff in that can't be removed because things get in the way. One note of that happens all the time, fortunately not so much anymore because they're not as popular, but that underglow nonsense that everybody was doing for the longest time, we still get bikes that come in here that have that, and everyone's favorite place to stick one of those on is on the air cleaner on the underside of it, and now your air cleaner can't be taken off. And boy, if you're trying to work on the motor, taking the air cleaner off is pretty important. Anyway, that's a tangent. But we are gonna make this work. So there is, a pretty simple way of doing this, and this is another issue I I have a little bit here with these guys is their instructions leave something to be desired. Now, to be fair, they've got a QR code with some references to other stuff, and they've got some videos on their website, and it gives you a little bit more information than what's here. But when you look at the wiring diagram, when you go to the instructions, the PDF of this instruction on the website is actually more complete than what comes in here. And they give you a wiring diagram and they say, yeah, your bike has a 2-wire turn signal setup, which it does. It's similar to this, where you've just got a ground and a turn signal for each side, because that's what the factory turn signals do. They're not running lights and they're not brake lights. They're just turn signals. So they say, okay, hook the ground wire up to the black wire, hook the turn signal wire up to whichever one, and that's how you do it. And you go, hey, wait a second. These are dual color LEDs. I bought these things because they were 3-function. Are you not going to show me how to actually wire this up so that I can use the full functionality of it? Well, the answer is they do have that information. It's just not in the wiring diagram and in the PDF. So you have to dig around for it to find it. But I don't know. I just think they could be a little bit more upfront and clear of saying, hey, this is how this is going to work. And then if you wanted to, get the full functionality of it, this is what you're going to need to do, and put that all in the box or, in the PDF or whatever. Anyway, don't worry about it because I'm going to show you. So basically, we are going to use this, although it's not giving us a whole lot of what we need, but we need some of it's giving us some of the things. So we are going to be able to jump in line in the within the turn signals, which is good. We could tap all that stuff in, but I'd like to make it removable. We are going to have to tap the wires for the brake light and running light function because we don't really have a choice. You'll still be able to remove the rear fender. It's just going to be a little bit more complicated. So I'm going to try and do the best I can on that, but just know adding in that extra function requires a little bit of customization, and it kind of makes removing the rear fender a little harder, or making this modular a little harder. But I'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So we've got 2 wires here. What we need is 4. So I just kind of picked 2 wires that I had a bunch of that are the right size. So it's a yellow one and a blue one, not for any reason. But basically, we're going to need to run, we've got a black and then a purple and a brown, and respectively for each side. So that's going to be our turn signal. So we're going to need a brake and a running power to come through each side. So the first thing I'm going to do is open this up and kind of see where the splices and stuff are. Hopefully these are all 4 separate wires running through here and be able to just split it up, figure out our lengths, and start to make some of these connections. So let me get this set up and I'll show you what we're going to do. Okay, so I've got my wiring figured out. Now, I'm pretty sure I found a contradiction or a mistake or I don't know what. Like I said, Codlin's information is kind of all over the place. I told you the PDF that is online for the instructions had a wiring diagram in it, which I'm pretty sure is wrong. I will put an image of it up there on the screen for you. This is just a screenshot of the PDF from their website. And I'm pretty sure what it says, and I'm remembering, so if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I believe it's saying if you just want to use the 2-wire method, which is just going to give you an amber turn signal, it says at the bottom, you're going to hook your black to black, and you're going to hook the turn signal wire, the only other wire in your stock harness, up to the yellow wire, which is going to give you, it says, an amber turn signal. Well, that didn't jive with the other diagram I saw when I dug a little deeper, so I decided to just test all these wires and see what I could come up with, and what I came up with is not that. So according to my testing, that yellow wire is actually the run circuit, which is going to give you a low brightness red light, not a high brightness amber light. So based on what I've just tested here, black is obviously ground, red is the brake, yellow is the run, and brown is the turn signal. So that's how we're going to wire it up. So what I've done is I took that custom dynamics harness and kind of hacked it up a little bit. And I've got myself now one of these for each side. So this purple side is going to be for the left. So here's where I'm going to tap into the turn signal circuit. And I cut these to the right length to match up with the Codlin light. And then I gave myself 2 extra wires. One is going to be for the running light. One's going to be for the brake light. So we'll solder all of these 4 wires to these 4 wires here. And honestly, now that I'm looking at it, I might have picked too heavy a gauge wire. which these are so small. I think I could probably just run something a little smaller and make life a little bit easier. So I might redo these before we solder them on and find something that's a little bit smaller of a gauge. But in any event, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So basically we'll then be left with turn signal wires ready to plug in. And these other wires are going to have to get tapped into the harness. Now, I could make plugs and whatever. I'm not going to, and I'll show you why. The fender struts are not going to be individually removable, but because you can unplug the harness for the taillight assembly to remove the fender, you're going to be able to remove the whole thing as one unit, which is kind of the idea. So I'll show you that when we get there, but I'm going to do these soldered connections now. I'm going to bring this stuff over to the other workbench. I'm not going to show you that. It's literally just going to be, 4 solders on each side, and then I'll just, lay these, tape the harnesses up, and we'll have the ends free, and we'll start to swap these onto the bike. So we'll pick up there, I guess. So stick around. Okay, well, I've got the first set of solders done, so these are ready to get mounted up. I neglected to show you what I did to actually mount these up. It's literally just 2 screws and washers that go in from the backside, a little bit of Loctite, snug them down. So I missed showing you that, but hopefully that's no big deal. We've got these little sticky keeper things that came with the new struts, which was nice because the old ones didn't have any, obviously. So we got that wire all run in, all taped up, and then we've got our ends ready to get connected once we get these on the bike. So I've got both sides done, and I did, if you notice, find smaller wire, and actually it worked out because the colors make a little bit more sense. The blue for the running light and the red for the brake light makes a little more sense than the colors I had before. So that stuff's all ready. So we'll go over to the bike and we will get these mounted up. We'll just swap one side and then the other. And then once we've got them both mounted up on the bike, we'll get the wiring done, and hopefully we'll be wrapping this up soon. All right, in order to get these removed, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts on the outside, and then there is 1 on the inside. That one on the inside is where I'm going to start. I find the best way to get at it is from the other side with a long extension and a swivel. Now, I will give you full disclosure here. This really kind of does suck doing it this way, and you're much better off just undoing 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts on each side, take the whole thing off the bike, and do the rest of it on the workbench, and then you get easy access to these. Particularly if the suspension on your bike is not raised, you'll have even less room to get in here. In the case of the bikes where it's raised up a little bit, it is really not terrible, and actually jack the suspension up as much as possible to give yourself as much room as you can. It can be done, and I'll show you. It's a little awkward, and you got to be careful, and Harley uses, like, I don't know, about 100 pounds of Loctite on a lot of these fasteners, so it's kind of slow going. So in any event, it can be done this way, obviously, because we're doing it this way, but the real proper way to do it would be to just remove the whole thing. And again, I'll point out, part of the reason why we want to make sure we keep this whole fender assembly modular, you got to be able to take this off. There are reasons like this that you might want to remove the whole fender. Let's see if I get it loose enough. Yeah, there we go. All right, so got it. See, it wasn't really that bad. It just, it can be a little bit awkward. And certainly, like I said, would be worse if you didn't have the bike jacked up. All right, let's do the others. Okay, so from here, it's pretty straightforward. Just got 1, 2, 3, 4 to remove. So I'll just crack them all loose. And then just spit them all off. So it's kind of what I was talking about, some of these bolts with 300 pounds of Loctite on them. All right, and then what's back here is, rather than nuts, you get this big plate. So you just want to put a hand on that so it doesn't come crashing down. All right, and then we will take these out. And off it comes. So looking at the back side, you can see what I was talking about. There is one notch, as though they were going to let you run wires through here. But then when you look at the next two, there's no notches. Hard to imagine why they set it up to be manufactured this way. Like they had half a thought and then we're like, never mind. Did it half one way, half the other. No idea. But anyway, so this is going to go in the spare parts pile, and I'll grab the other fender, I'll grab the other strut, and we'll put that on. I'll just give this a little wipe off first, and we'll get that one put on. Okay, the other bolts are fine. These two, this old Loctite's got to get cleaned off. So bring them to the wire wheel, clean these off, grab the other fender strut, put it on. Okay, got our new strut and got some fresh Loctite put on all the hardware. Go ahead and start to get this put up in place here. So we got those loosely in place. I'm gonna go put the other one on the other side, and then we'll tighten all these up. All right, so there's our new fender struts on. Definitely could use a wipe down from all my fingerprints, but they're looking really good. I already did the other side, so we've got both of our wiring harnesses here, ready to go. So obviously, I made them a little bit longer than they needed to be, but a little bit of a service loop is never a bad thing. So we're gonna, obviously we have our right side one here, and then we have the left side that'll just kind of come across and then meet up here. So this is not a thing that's gonna be super easy for me to show you on camera, but basically what you have here is 3 separate harnesses, just like it was back for the taillight. You've got a left turn and a right turn, and these are obviously going to be plug and play because of the custom dynamics part of this harness. So we'll plug the male end into the bike, and then these will plug into the factory turn signal plugs will plug into these females. For the tail light functions, we've got a red and a blue wire from each side, and what we'll do is we will join these together, so we'll have one red and one blue connection, and we'll need to splice those in to the blue wire and the blue wire with the red stripe on it here. So there are, some easy, some less easy ways to do that. We're gonna do it stripping back some wire and doing a solder. We're not gonna use like a posi tap or anything like that. So that's what I'm gonna do, and I'll show you what that looks like, and then hopefully we'll be able to test these things. All right, so I guess I'll show you a little bit of this. So I've got one side, so the blue wires, you can see them coming together here into this heat shrink. They're tapped into that wire and that plug there. So this one I haven't quite wrapped up yet. So here's your 2 red wires, which are the brake wires, tapped in on the brake wire circuit. And I've got those soldered, and then we just need to throw a piece of heat shrink on here. And that should do it. Just grab the heat gun. Okay. So now that plug goes back in the middle here. Let's put that through. Actually, it goes the other way. Let's see. Yeah, this way. All right, so we'll slide that in. Hear that click, it's locked. And these plugs have one more little safety factor built into them. This little pin here, which I don't really remember which side it came off of. There we go. Boom. All right. So obviously what we've got to do still is get these wires taped up so we don't have this all exposed under here. But before I tape it up, I feel like maybe it's a good idea to just test it out and make sure everybody's going to play nicely with each other. So we can start off by plugging the brake light harness in, and then we've got our left side plug here, and that will connect to the left side plug here, and we've got our right side. That might not have been right. I might have gotten those backwards, but hey, we're gonna find out, I guess, right? No, you know what? I think that was right. Okay, so everything is connected. Here, I'll keep the camera rolling and we'll just take a walk over here and you can see, oops, sorry, if you just threw up. You'll be able to see with me if this is gonna function as we hope. So, start with power up. That looks good to me. Let's do a right turn. Okay, so the turn signals are backwards. Not sure how I did that, but it's an easy fix. But hang on a second. Are all the turn signals backwards? No. So this is on the correct one. That one needs to be changed. So what we will do is on the right side. Okay, that should theoretically do it. Let's try again. All right, running lights on both sides. Right turn. Boom. Right turn, right turn. Let's try left turn. Left, left. And finally, let's do the brake. Now, I can't see the brake light on the other side, but this one's working, so I'm presuming that this one's working too. Yep, looks good to me. I'm feeling real good about that. We've got the correct colors, correct brightnesses, everything is correct. So, next thing we need to do here is, well, we'll need to do a BCM sync. So turn the hazard lights on, turn the power to the bike off, let it sit here for a couple minutes. While this is flashing, I will take the opportunity, you can see right there how it just connected everything. So we'll let that keep going for a little while. I'm gonna go ahead and get this stuff taped up and get these harnesses cleaned up. I'll give you one more view of that once it's all tidied up. And we'll start getting these tools cleaned up and start getting the bike finally put back together. And then I think we've only got one last thing to do, which is just get the bike on the ground and check the alignment on the headlights. So let's get it done. All right, well, not much to see here because this all tucked in really nicely, so I guess that's a good thing. But you can see you've got the harness running across for the left side, meets up with the tail light harness here, harness from the right side. They all come down here, and then it all kind of tucks down under here. Everything's all taped up, and got our connectors back in their spots. One of them just sitting right there. I think the other one kind of went down below. But we are good to go. This is 100% buttoned up, so let's get the seat on. Let's get these tools cleared out of the way, and we'll get the finished product down on the ground. All right, well, that's going to be a wrap on this one. Headlight was pretty much perfect. Had to tilt it up just a little bit, and now it's dead on. You can see those little micro turn signals down there are downright invisible without that light coming out of it. And moving around to the back, you can actually see those turn signals we put on really well. The bags don't get in the way of it at all, and they actually add a little bit of reflection. Almost helps to see them a little bit better. But again, super invisible, and if you didn't have the bags on, it would be a really nice look. You'd be able to see them a little bit better. But definitely a really nice upgrade in lighting, both front and rear, courtesy of Custom Dynamics and the Codlin lights as well. I'm going to say I'm a fan of them. They were left a little something to be desired in terms of, the instructions and, maybe the plug and playness of them, if you will. But if you're willing to put the effort in, it's a really nice product when it's all said and done. So, like I said, it's going to be a wrap on this bike, and hopefully our customer enjoys it.